In 1945, towards the end of World War II, a kamikaze pilot, Koichi, arrives on Oho Island claiming he needs repairs. Sosaku Tachibana, the head mechanic, suspects he may have fled, but he stays at the nearby camp by the water. Under the cover of darkness, the ground shakes with thunderous footsteps, signaling the arrival of Godzilla. Soldiers nearby illuminate the scene, revealing the dreaded beast as it begins its rampage, devouring some of the men in its path. In the chaos, Koichi tries to escape but is overcome and loses consciousness. Despite the peril, both pilot and mechanic manage to survive their encounter with the monstrous creature. Upon his return to his war-torn village in Tokyo, Koichi is confronted by a local who recognizes him and accuses him, along with others involved in the war, of being responsible for the deaths of their families, including his own parents. In the midst of this turmoil, Koichi encounters authorities chasing a woman named Noriko. She places a baby in his arms before fleeing. Despite initial reluctance, Koichi cannot bring himself to abandon the child. She later explains that the baby is not hers. She found her after her parents were presumably killed in bombings. Despite initial objections, he agrees to care for the child, whom they name Akiko, and both form an unlikely family unit. 2 years pass, and Koichi and Noriko have embraced their roles as parents to the baby. He takes on work aboard a minesweeper, where he forms bonds with fellow crew members, Doc, Captain Yoji, and Kid Mizushima. However, their camaraderie is disrupted by news of Godzilla's return, prompting his enlistment as a gunman. With tensions between the US and the Soviet Union preventing aid to Japan, he sees this as a means to provide for Noriko and Akiko. Despite her objections and fears for his safety, as the men venture into the waters, they buy time while awaiting a larger vessel to confront Godzilla. The monstrous lizard, mutated from US nuclear tests during Operation Crossroads, emerges menacingly. Despite trembling hands, Koichi bravely fires upon Godzilla. The crew strategically releases a mine into its mouth and detonates it, causing significant damage, yet Godzilla begins to regenerate and heal. Just as the vessel Takao arrives to confront Godzilla, the creature charges up its devastating heat blast. In a blinding flash of light, Godzilla unleashes its destructive power, obliterating the Takao and demonstrating its overwhelming force. After finally returning home, Koichi shares with Noriko the harrowing events that unfolded on the water. He recounts his previous encounter with Godzilla and the survivor's guilt that weighed heavily on him after witnessing the loss of those he cared about. Finding solace in Noriko's comforting embrace, Koichi begins to reconcile his emotions with her support. Amid the turmoil in Ginza, Noriko finds herself aboard a train under attack by Godzilla. Despite the chaos, she manages to escape unharmed. Koichi, realizing her danger, rushes into the city to find her amidst the panic. As the military engages Godzilla, Koichi finally locates Noriko, but their reunion is short-lived as the city falls victim to the monster's devastating rampage. In a desperate attempt to shield Koichi from an ensuing explosion, she pushes him into an alleyway before being swept away herself. Unable to find her amidst the chaos, he is left to face the aftermath of Godzilla's destruction alone. Later, in a meeting led by Doc, a daring plan is proposed to trap Godzilla underwater using Freon tanks. However, with the government refusing assistance, Koichi and his comrades resolve to carry out the plan themselves. Should the underwater trap fail, they plan to force Godzilla to resurface and execute it through explosive decompression using balloons. He also reconnects with Tachibana, seeking his help in securing a jet filled with explosives for a daring mission, flying it into Godzilla's mouth to destroy the creature from within. Despite the risks of not returning and potentially leaving Akiko orphaned once more, he is determined to carry out his plan. However, Tachibana cautions him against acting out of vengeance for Noriko's death. Before departing, he entrusts money to their neighbor Sumiko, who agrees to care for Akiko in his absence. In the sea, as Godzilla reemerges, Koichi and his comrades set their plan into motion. Drawing the monster's attention, he lures it back into the ocean with gunfire. Doc's plan to trap Godzilla underwater briefly takes effect, but the creature survives both that and the subsequent balloon explosion. Despite collective efforts to subdue Godzilla, the monster proves resilient and only grows more enraged. With death seemingly imminent as Godzilla prepares another devastating heat blast, he returns in the jet and executes his daring maneuver, ejecting just before impact as Tachibana had instructed. Godzilla's head explodes and its body disintegrates, bringing an end to the threat. In the aftermath, his bravery and survival are celebrated, along with the successful defeat of Godzilla. As the men return to Tokyo, Koichi is surprised to see Sumiko arriving with Akiko, along with a note. Rushing to the hospital, they discover Noriko alive, albeit suffering from possible radiation poisoning. Overwhelmed with tears of both joy and relief, he emotionally reunites with her. In the final scene, a piece of Godzilla's flesh sinks into the depths, ominously hinting at the creature's potential for regeneration and future threats.